I'm engaged. How do I get married? I'm your host, Kevin Dennis. In addition to leading the charge at Wedding IQ, I also run Fantasy Sound Event Services, a lighting and entertainment company based in Livermore, California, that I founded over 35 years ago. Each week on this podcast, we'll explore a new corner of the wedding planning so you can prepare for your I-dos without the stress. From budgeting to booking vendors to day of drama, let's talk smart wedding planning. All right, folks, welcome to the next episode of Now That I'm Engaged, How Do I Get Married? I'm here with the amazing Kristy Rice, and she's going to be talking to us about be your own inspiration for your wedding day aesthetic. So, Kristy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh my
and
goodness.
How did you get here today? Like, how did we get to this moment?
I don't know. No. So yeah, I run this really crazy creative stationery studio called Momental Designs. We create bespoke.
See,
Bespoke.
you not alone today.
Stationery for couples worldwide. And I have a team of 10, and we just are doing our thing. And how I ended up here, I have no idea, because when I first started my brand, my business, whatever you want to call it, I just was like, oh yeah, I want to be like known in Pennsylvania for stationery. And here I am, doing the whole global thing. So, it's pretty cool.
It is cool.
Yeah.
So, all right. So stationery, we're talking about wedding day aesthetics. Talk me through the process that you have to get couples to like get going. Like, what's the first first part,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll be honest, because bespoke stationery is really built upon decision making. And I have found that couples in the last few years, I don't want to start talking about generation titles, but, they were brought up, in a very different way. They were taught a different way. It was like community learning, community decision making. And so I am finding now that is something that we have to work towards and really understand that. So the big hurdle for our couples is trusting themselves.
Oh, I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
Been taught to make decisions by committee.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and trusting yourself with this new medium, which is stationery as fine art. And that can be just momentously overwhelming. I don't even know if that's a word.
That is.
You know what I mean? And so that is the first step, educating them on certain words that we're going to use all the time, educating them on, certain types of decisions they're going to be making on a regular basis, repeatable type decisions, but also making it fun. I mean, because it is fun, but we have to figure out a way to make it fun and exciting and inspiring for them. So, yeah. How
long does it take to get to that process? It seems kind of like it's kind of takes a while.
Honestly, a lot of it's ongoing.
Okay.
That's where the relationship piece comes in. And that's why, couples hear the advice all the time. You need to hire someone that you feel like you could be friends with. And this is a perfect example of why that is so important, because you are developing a relationship with them over a certain amount of period of time, whether it's 3 months, whether you're doing something last minute, it's still a 3-month relationship during the most stressful, crazy time of your life to this point. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't, the learning continues throughout the whole process.
So now, is there a way like couples use social media like Pinterest, Instagram to get inspiration, or like where do we channel? Where do you want them to go?
I mean, I really want our couples. I'm an OG. So, I want them to go to the website, but I know that that's not usually the first place they find us. I'm okay with that. We are very present, for example, on Instagram and stories, right? But we are often then gearing our stories to, okay, here's a place you can go. You like this piece of content. This piece of content is, inspiring more questions. Okay, now go here. And that is usually back to our website, because we've created kind of this information space on our site that they can access when they're ready. But I'm not forcing them there first, because that's not where they want to be first. They want to be just scrolling through, doing keyword searches, tag search, hashtag searches, in their feed on Instagram. And so they're getting excited, inspired, entertained first by our content. And then the questions, the deeper dive comes after that. And we get them to our site, or, a phone call, of course.
So with my company, because we do lighting and drapery, and chandeliers, I will sometimes have clients that come to me and they're showing me all these, Instagram and showing me these photos in Pinterest. And then meanwhile, that's not what they want. They like one little item out of the, one little small little thing out of the photo, but yet they're showing it to me, and one example is this one bride kept showing me, she kept telling me, I want everything to be pale pink and blah, 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 pink. And everything she showed me in her photos were lavender. And I'm like, girl, now, I just, as an outsider looking at her work, I was like, do you recognize this? And she's like, and then her mom like tapped her on the shoulder and goes, I told you, it was that moment. So like how, when you're going through that process with them, how do you get it out of them? You know what I'm saying? Like how do.
Yes, because, and I think this comes back to understanding the platforms that they are doing their research on. So let's talk about Instagram, TikTok. We are all being trained to have shorter attention spans. So what does that mean? We're also being trained to spot things that we like squirrel, 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 and hone in on it very quickly. So as the creatives, we need to understand that. We need to speak to that. So I feel like we need to ask questions like, okay, so I'm seeing a lot of lavender here. Is that what you want me to see? Or is there something else you want me to see? I think those kind of questions are important across the, niches, across the industry, whether you're a stationer, a designer, food, whatever. We have to understand attention spans, how they are digesting information, and we have to figure out the new questions to ask. So if your creatives aren't doing that.
Well, how do we get them like to objectively look at their photos? Like, is there a trick to that or?
Question.
Okay.
What do you see here? Like, what is important in this photo? Ask them that. Because you as the creative, like you just said, you had heard from the couple, pink, pink, pink. And then she's showing you all lavender, lavender, lavender. So you have to take that cue because she's not gonna.
Yeah.
It's your job. I'm sorry. I'm not like trying to school.
No, school me, girl.
It's our job to then be like, oh, she said pink. I need to ask this next question. What is it you want me to see here? Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
No. All right. So then we're going through the process. Is there like, how do we bring how do they bring their personality into their wedding day? What are things that, a couple can do to really make sure it's about the two of them? Because I'm a big believer. I'm not a cookie cutter person when it comes to weddings. I want it all to be, even though it's a wedding, everything is the same at a wedding. There's dinner and first dance and whatever traditions you choose to do. But it's like, I want it to be about the two of them. So how do we get that information out of them?
So this is a problem that has never stopped from the first day that I opened my doors to today, right? Because there is always a number of couples that just, it seems effortless for them to express themselves. They just have an instinct about it. And then that is what we see the most of when we are on the blogs, on the Instagram accounts, on TikTok. We are seeing a lot of that same content or the same style of content again and again. And we're like, okay, well, this is how it is to be creative and express ourselves. But that's essentially, you're becoming cookie cutter. So our couples have a hard time stepping outside of that. And so the ways that we do that is we ask them a lot of questions. We ask them, number one, to look back to their own lives, to their own homes, to their own spaces, to their own, their childhood homes, textiles that they loved and grew up with. Like, and I just went from the big picture to the small. You know what I mean? Like, we encourage them to understand the thought process behind making decisions that are personalized, not just seeing the end result of a personalized choice, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. So now what do couples need to look at, like, brands they identify with, where they shop, does that help all that? And why is it? And why is that important?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, as a business owner, we look at that stuff to figure out how to speak to the couples that we are now being hired by, right? So, but we need to throw that back and be like, this is how you figure out how to translate your personality, all the cool stuff that makes you who you are, is a product of where you shop, where you love to eat, the wines that you love to drink, the vacation spots that you go to again and again. It's like this solar system of details, and they are orbiting around you. So we got to figure out what's in that solar system.
I like that solar system analogy, because it is. But it's the way if you think about it, all that stuff that we do is all out there, and we're, like, I'm very brand loyal. Like I joke that I would buy an Apple, anything, if Apple made a car or a vacuum or a blender, and it's just, for me, that, I'm a very loyal to the brands that I identify with. So I can see that, so if someone was doing an event for me, getting all that to come out, then it becomes personalized and the same. So,
and we see that a lot too. It comes out in the disconnect where the couple comes to us. I want to express my personality. I saw something on your site that someone else did, and they're kind of making that into their own thing. And then when they see the physical sample of what that looks like, we'll sometimes hear things like, it just doesn't feel me enough. It doesn't feel custom enough. So as the creatives, like, they're looking to us when they say things like that. That's our cue. It's not that we did something wrong. That's our cue to be like, we didn't dig deep enough with you. We didn't pull enough out of you. We didn't ask enough questions. So let's figure out how to make it more custom. And that may mean, and often means, getting them to be comfortable enough to step outside of, I'm just going to do this thing that someone else did, but with an illustration of my dog or an illustration of my venue. You know what I mean? So
how, when I'm going through the process with, I'm a couple hiring you, is there trends that, I would see when I'm looking at your work, or is there not? Because it sounds like everything's custom. Like, what kind of trends are you seeing right now with everyone?
I mean, with our work specifically in our style, we are definitely more of a maximalist type of aesthetic.
Okay.
Our couples are maximalist. More is more when it comes visually. They love mixing patterns. They love, and so just that, from that perspective of us as a brand, trends, I struggle with answering these type of
questions. All right, fair.
And I think it's because, and I didn't used to struggle as much even 5 years ago as I do now, because again, our attention spans are so different and so well trained that a trend now can last for 5 weeks. You know what I mean? And then it's off again. So I shy away from talking about trends anymore, because again, I want to understand the patterns, the long-lived patterns of our couples and their decision-making patterns. I will say this, I think it's more about the anti-trend aesthetic.
Okay. I like this. Okay. Yeah. And by, when you say anti-trend, it's just being different. Is that what it is, or just
different and just digging deep on kind of your own personal brand of your own personal brand?
Yeah. Well, like something I'll hear is like, hey, I'm getting married at the same place my cousin got married at, and they had this chandelier. I don't want that chandelier. So how can we make it different? And then I start trying to turn it on them and asking them, like, what do you like? And what, let's forget your cousin's wedding. We know what happened there. We can do different food. You can do different linen, and the venue they're at is a blank slate. So it's easy to make it look different. But I'm like, let's start talking about you. So how do we get them talking about themselves?
Okay.
Like, is there...
Yes. Love this question. So okay. I think, I'm a YouTuber, okay. And there is a saying, and it's show, don't tell. Right. So for me, it's all about, because visualization is very hard for a vast majority of the population, right?
It is.
Yeah. So for me, it's about, I'm not going to just tell you what I think we could do. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you with my own imagery. I'm going to sketch. I'm going to ask you to show me something on your phone. And, it's all about show. Less conversation when you're in the brainstorming, brain dump mode of, okay, what can we do that's different with the chandelier? Like you just said, we need to show. It should be all about the visual when we're communicating at those kind of junction points in the decision-making process. More show.
And that's probably where a lot of couples miss the boat, is they're not being visual. They're just trying, they know they need a photographer, and they don't know why, but they know they need it. They know they need, like for you, they know they need stationery, they got to tell people when, where, and how, and why, and what to get there. And so it's just
a step further. They know with us, they know they love stationery. They know that stationery is a priority, but even so, they still can have such a struggle and difficult time figuring out how to connect all of these dots into something that ultimately is almost purely visual.
And now it's something that just popped in my head while you were talking about it. It is like, we live in this paperless world now, and I feel like people, when they get paper, it feels more magical than it used to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think creating a piece that is even more about yourselves is more important today than it ever has been.
Yes. I feel like, because there's so many conversations, years ago, stationery dying and and certain stationery is dying. Yeah. And has died. Yeah. But, bespoke, highly custom, there's even more leverage, visual leverage with those type of pieces. It's actually very exciting.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. So, all right, we've talked about all kinds of different things, but why do you feel it's important for a couple to add their own touches to their wedding day?
Why is it important to love the clothing you leave the house in every morning?
Okay.
Because you don't want to sit through your entire day feeling like you're tugging at something and it's scratching and it just doesn't feel like it fits, right? You don't want to look back on that day and have that, like, I use this story all the time. I got married in 2000. Oh my God. And I have that one thing that, like, to this day is like an itch in my soul. Right?
Oh. And what is it? Can you share it?
My wedding cake. It was my wedding cake. It was my awful wedding cake. And I knew it wasn't me. And I knew that I didn't put attention into it. And I knew that it was going to be a disappointment. So, the reason that you want to invest time in learning how to make these types of decisions is so you don't have that itch in your soul 23 years later. I was
going to say, wow, 23 years ago, and you're still upset about the wedding cake. Yeah.
Now, I redeemed because when we had our 10-year renewal, I hired Sylvia Weinstock.
Oh, did you? Really good for you.
To do our cake.
And that was amazing.
I'm so glad I did. It was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow.
Now, random question. Was the cake, the OG cake, was it good at least?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay. I was just curious.
I don't think so.
So it didn't look good. It wasn't you, and it wouldn't even taste good. It
was just tainted with my lack of my everything. It could have tasted like the best thing ever, but
I can, well, I got married a few years after you. I got married in '08, but there's the one thing that kind of still haunts me a little bit is brown was all the thing. And so I wore a brown tuxedo. And so, and it's funny because it was all the thing. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be different and wear brown. And now that I look back in the photos, I was like, what the was I think, like it's just like classic's classic. And it always, it's timeless. Like where I really dated myself right then and there in my photos. So.
Now, but don't be scaring folks to making bold decisions.
No. You need to make bold decisions, but just not ones that are brown. No, I'm just teasing.
No brown. Yeah, no brown. Mm-hmm. No.
What do you want couples to know about stationery? What do we want to leave them with?
We touched on this before. We are in such a magical time for weddings in so many ways because we're coming out of an era that so many of us don't want to remember. And, we are, and that era just shifted weddings forever, but in beautiful ways. We've gotten back to the heart and soul of celebration. And like I mentioned, like paper now, the tangibles are so much more powerful. And that is incredibly exciting. So, do you need to spend whatever a fortune is in your brain on stationery? No. But should you leverage the power of really strong, thoughtful, mindful decisions with your stationery? Absolutely, because they're going to have so much more impact now.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's very magical when you get something in the mail that's not obviously a bill or whatever, but it just and you're touching it and the paper feels nice and you're like, wow. And people really went, all out to get to that point. So, all right. So Kristy, we like to, you got a friend behind you. I'll come in to visit you, but, your cat making it, is it a he or she?
Well, that's a complicated question. It's a he. It's a he, but her name is Frida Bell. His name is Frida Bell Catlow. He's gender fluid because we didn't know when we named. Yeah,
it's fair. I think there's a lot of animals named that way. Anyway, we love to ask our guests, what is your favorite part of the wedding? I'm making you think.
My favorite part of the wedding is, gosh. I think my favorite part of the wedding, there's so many.
I agree. I have so many too. And I feel like it's changed for me as I become a dad too. So,
Yeah. Okay. I still think it's pretty classic. It's just that moment, the steel magnolias, right? Mm-hmm. Again, I'm aging, dating myself, OGing myself, but that, if I remember correctly, like the doors were opened at the chapel and like you felt like this collective gasp as the marrier started walking down the aisle. And for me, that is still just fire.
It's magical. I agree. That's still a magical moment.
Yeah.
That's a very you can't repeat that moment. You know what I'm saying? No. It's just, it's very natural. It happens.
So good.
I really love that.
There's this like communal emotion explosion happening in that space. It's wonderful.
I agree. So, all right, Kristy, you're amazing. How do we get in touch with you?
Oh my gosh. So you can find me and my team on Instagram at Momental. I am on TikTok, the Momentals. I haven't been on there a lot, but there's a lot of funny content on there. So maybe check it out. Momentaldesigns.com, of course. And, if you want to learn how to paint watercolor, just look for Kristy the Painter. Just search me anywhere and you can find me.
Oh, I'm intrigued now.
Oh, yeah. Watercolor.
Do you do
it's the basis of everything we do at Momental. But in 2020, I had to figure out how to make money. So I went back to teaching watercolor and became a YouTuber and, got my silver play button and all the things. So.
That good for you. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Good for you. You can open in our town, they have it's called something, I don't know. You go drink wine and paint.
Paint and sip.
Yep. People.
I always say I ain't going to do no paint and sips unless I'm sipping tequila.
Yeah. Good for you. Is that our drink of choice?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So if we're inviting Kristy to the wedding, we got to make sure we have tequila, and we got to make sure we have that magical door opening moment. And then Kristy's going to be happy.
Very happy.
Anyway, Kristy, I can't thank you enough for being here, talking to us about stationery. I'm sure there was more that we could have covered. We could probably bring you back. We won't talk about trends. I learned the hard way. I do agree with you, though, when it comes to trends. That is kind of a bad word, because why do you want to? I mean, we start seeing things, but I hate the color of the year. I hate all that stuff. I don't know why.
It's crazy. I want to say this. Hopefully this can make it in. So there is a trend going around. It started on TikTok and then it went into Instagram. It was that Wes Anderson soundbite. And it was like this kind of Wes Anderson music. And then everybody was like, what if my were a Wes Anderson film?
Oh.
And I think that is such a perfect example of how short-lived trends are now across industries, because that was so powerful. You had people, a Wes Anderson wedding, a Wes Anderson, Star Wars scene, and now it's already dying.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a tough one.
That is a tough one, but we're not going to talk about it anymore. All right, Kristy, I, again, can't thank you enough for being here, sharing your knowledge with all our listeners. We really appreciate it, and we hope to have you back again soon.
It's been a blast. Thank
you. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Now That I'm Engaged, How Do I Get Married podcast, brought to you by Fantasy Sound Event Services. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode. Please get in touch with me if you have a topic you would like us to cover, or if you are struggling with your wedding planning. Please be sure to submit a question at podcast@fantasysound.com. I encourage you to check out our other episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're a fan, we'd love if you would subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It helps others find our podcast so they can learn from our guests too. And to everyone listening, happy wedding planning.